Good morning, Małgorzata Bonikowska. I work for the Center for International Relations.
With you. Those who need translations, please just take hands-free. They are available in the corridor. We will have 1 hour just to discuss a very, very, very interesting topic, which is an influence of the green transformation on the world, on the economy, on the capitalism, on the free market we know, we are used to. And we would like to see how much change, how deeply the change will be, and in what way it will change our life, the green transformation we are trying to implement. I represent a think tank, and with me we have 2 colleagues from think tanks as well. I am from Poland, the Center for International Relations. One of the topics we cover is also green transformation. And let me introduce the panelists. Let me start with my colleagues from the think tank. We have Maciej Bukowski from Poland. Hello, Maciej.
Hello.
Maciej is the economist. It's a president of a think tank, very, very famous one, really dedicated to the economy, which is called WiseEuropa, or WiseEuropa. I don't know how you pronounce it.
It's an abbreviation, actually. So.
WISE, known because of many political and especially economic analysis they are doing. And Tom Palmer, who is actually a complicated mixture, but he's working from Thailand. Hello, Tom. Good morning.
Pleasure to be here.
And Tom is representing the partner of today's panel. Could you just elaborate a little bit more about the think tank you are representing, the organization?
I work with Atlas Network, which is a network of about 503 think tanks in 102 different countries. And so looking at public policy improvements in all of their local contexts.
And very impressive, because that's really a network with a lot of partner organizations all over the world, all the continents, I guess. Yep. You represent. Great. And last but not least, definitely, we have a very well-known person in Poland, a member of the European Parliament, Madame Róża Thun. Good morning. Welcome. Thank you for being with us. Róża is representing, well, she's very well known because she used to be an activist. She was for many years the president of Schuman Foundation, and known because of her absolutely passionate involvement in the European affairs even before Poland joined the European Union. And now she is a member of parliament representing Renew Europe, the fraction of liberal parties in the European Parliament, and well known also for her activity concerning certain fragments of our market, especially I remember your efforts. You dedicated a lot of attention to reducing roaming payments. We are all benefiting out of this action, so congratulations and thanks a lot for that. So, my question just to start with would be, maybe I will start with Maciej as an economist. How do you see really the change in our model, in our economic model? We are in Poland particularly curious because we were fighting for a long time to switch from socialism into capitalism and free market. And now after 30 years, we are having in front of us another huge change. So how would you describe this moment, and how would you describe this change for the free market, which comes with the green development?
Well, actually, I don't believe that this change is so tremendous as it is normally described. Yes, actually, when you look at the economic history, you understand that the economy is changing constantly. So this is nothing new. Over the last 150 years, since the start of the second industrial revolution in 1870, we see this rapid technological change that every generation witnesses important turnovers in the lifestyle, in technology.
Yeah, but you are looking, from the historic point of view, but we people, our lifetime is much shorter than 150 years, and we are worried. So for us, This will be a change.
Well, maybe, but if somebody was born in 1870, it was before the cars were there, before the planes, before even the trains were not so widely spread. You didn't have telephones, you didn't have central heating, you didn't even have electricity and running water. And then after 80 years, if somebody lived for 80 years, then this is 1950s or 1970s, and then you see
let's put it this way.
World,
we have
yes?
mostly young people on the audience.
So actually,
they don't remember really the life without
yes,
telephones
but
and
therefore
central heating.
I would say, I would like to underline that if you are talking and thinking about green transformation, this is something much less radical, much less radical. This is basically fuel shift. Yes, so we will have electricity, but this electricity will be produced from something else with different technology than we used to make electricity over the last 50, 70 years. Yeah? So we will have cars, but these cars will be, of course, they will be better. Yes, they will
Are you
be
sure?
leaner.
I
but
think
these
we are
cars will
convinced
be
to
not,
take bicycles now and not
but
to use cars.
introduction of car as a vehicle was much more radical than replacing one engine with another.
With him, it's difficult to discuss it because he just doesn't want to answer to my question. But is it really so simple?
Yes,
He says
simple.
nothing changes. And we
Yes.
are all convinced, like Chinese
many
times ago,
at the end
to
of the
use
day,
bicycles.
this is about relative prices, and we already see that technologies that we call green or clean, they are in many cases much cheaper than traditional one. And this, as it is, will introduce the change. Yes, because the prices will win eventually, technologies will win. Of course, other things also do matter. Incumbents, they approach the institutions, how the government approaches the change. The societal, not in my backyard problem. All of the problems that are always there, because we have economics, we have technology, we have also politics, we have also social changes, and they are always in clash. So no change is very easy, but I would argue that this transformation is much less radical than was observed 50 years ago with the introduction of feminism. Or,
that's an interesting argument.
So, because we are living, this is
I think
pretty easy. That's my claim.
He does answer the question. He just doesn't say what you would like to hear.
No, I think for him, it's much more problematic of feminism than a green transition. That's what I got. I don't know about you. So, okay, I buy this point of view. Róża will wait a little bit because I would like to go to Tom to widen our perspective, because if you have all these, chapters and partners all over the world, how do you see these consequences of this green change?
Well, let me start by agreeing 82% with what was just said, but there is an 18%. There will be a net reduction in output if this is not addressed. So prices are the guide. This is absolutely right. There's disruptive transformation, so we don't have to go back to the internal combustion engine. Think of just the digital transformation. Even the young people can remember before TikTok and how the world has been changed in a pretty short period of time. The difference here is there's going to need to be a lot of net investment. Mm-hmm. And so I think what we need to look at, just look at Poland compared to other countries. So it has the second least efficient or ratio of greenhouse gas to economic output in the European Union after Bulgaria. So this is not a great situation. Most of the power generation is coal, which is not that clean. So there needs to be investment in replacing that. It also, Poland has low-hanging fruit to address this. So we talk about carbon offsets, for example, it's a common part of the discussion. There needs to be an economic growth offset, and it's possible. Poland ranks 75th among all 165 countries in the world in economic freedom, so behind Mexico. I mean, seriously, Poles, you can do better than Mexico. There are opportunities in several areas that really impinge on energy. Number one, no surprise to this audience, reduction in performance of judicial institutions because of the attack on judicial independence. And that corresponds to relatively weak, compared to other European countries, contract enforcement and property protection compared to your neighbors. The other area, though, if you look at doing business report of the World Bank, Poland does very poorly in cost of installing electricity. Well, this is directly relevant. It's 113 days average time to get onto the grid. It's effectively illegal to have direct transmission. Cogeneration, which is local production, is limited in Poland. Construction permits, the record there is just dismal. It's 147 days average. 12 different administrative procedures. Poland has a complicated, cumbersome, costly administrative state. And now if you want to offset the costs of the new investments, start going there. There needs to be an economic growth offset. And I think it's eminently feasible when you look at how Poland ranks against its neighbors. It's the worst among all of its European neighbors, 75, Slovakia is 47, Czech Republic's 27, and then the Baltics, 20 for Latvia, 7 for Estonia, or Lithuania, and 12 for Estonia. You can do better in these areas.
Okay, it's interesting, you know, without even asking him to convince us, he is really trying to really convince us to do that, and he's also showing a very good understanding of Poland. I was hoping for this, you know, general global perspective, and Maciej is more global now, and you are trying to do the analysis of our own country. And I agree, we all agree, I think especially most of the young people would agree that that's a huge chance, but let's talk also about some challenges, something which maybe in the European Parliament, Róża, you are also facing. The microphone is there. The microphone is in front of you. I would like to ask you about also these negative aspects, because there are some. When we discuss it in Poland, and maybe when you discuss it also in Thailand and many other places, people worry. There are also many people who are afraid of this transformation. For example, labor market. They say, okay, maybe, you know, there are sectors that it will be completely, you know, shut down and they will lose jobs. That's what people say. What is the discussion in Brussels around that? How you handle these fears of people?
Yeah, fear is never positive. This is not a positive factor ever, but should we build on fears? I don't think that this would be the proper policy. So we do not build on fears, quite simply. There must be a discussion, information campaign based on facts, on perspectives. But I would disagree as first one with Mr. Bukowski.
I knew that you will comment on what Maciej said.
That this change is not faster and not more significant than ever before, because I'm a member of Polska 2050, and never in history, at least I don't know of such, there were such deadlines until this and this time we must stop emitting, or we must become climate neutral. This already in the mentality is a revolution. We must change everything in order to achieve this. And that means, of course, huge influence on the market, on the labor market, etc. From my point of view, that means more regulations. And I often ask myself how far we can regulate, but we must regulate. Yesterday, I had a fierce discussion with people about waste. Should we regulate the size of jam jars so that we can give them back and not destroy every time bottles? This is an old discussion. But what about all others? You know, what about those people who are employed in traditional production of packaging, etc., etc.? We will change all this. We will have to change all this. We will probably, I remember a discussion ages ago that this green wave, green mentality, green thinking, green policy, etc., will lead us to a dictatorship, because we will not be allowed to heat with certain materials, to wrap in a certain way. The products will have to be designed differently, you know, electrical products, for example.
So your point is basically
and I was opposing this very much. It's not a dictatorship, but I see from my own perspective that I myself personally regulate more and more. This eco-design, for example, for all possible fridges, radios, washing machines, etc., that is coming, we will oblige well, I have just finished working and it will be now implemented, this famous one, charger, USB-C. Not true. This is also a regulation in order to reduce waste and have less influence on the climate change. So, of course, it has a huge influence on the market, but I wouldn't call it negative, because I find it so exciting how fast knowledge, science, etc., innovation, genius ideas develop. I disagree with you. We never
Róża,
witnessed such a speed in history.
Let me just test our audience. I would like to ask you, we don't see clearly, but I hope you will be able to at least raise your hand, because we have two opposite point of view here. One panelist is saying that it's really nothing big. I mean, the change is important, but it's not so radical. In history, you know, there were changes which were more deep. And the other one is saying it's really a huge change, at least for us at our lifetime. Who is thinking it's really a massive change for us? Who is thinking this way? Okay, great. I will test you if you really do this exercise with us. Who is against this point of view? Who thinks it's not really a major change? So the audience is also divided. The audience is also divided. So let me dig into...
And who doesn't think anything?
That's a secret. That's a secret. Okay, listen, we, of course, always think about everything because we have certain memories, certain, you know, life. If people are a little bit older, they can, you know, compare it to some other times. So maybe, you know, taking into consideration Poland, we already had a huge change during our lifetime. In the 90s, we were able to, you know, switch from socialism into capitalism. Now another change is in front of us. So my question would be to Tom, who would represent for me rather other countries, not Poland, and especially, you know, the comparison between the West, when you really come from, and the Asian countries where you work, in Thailand. What do you think is really the discussion now? What is the difference in approach between the rich West, who is for this radical transformation, but who has resources, who is wealthy enough to do it quickly maybe, or quicker and deeper, and countries like Thailand you are based in, or other countries of Asia who say, well, we are not ready to pay for it. We want to live like you live now. So we don't want really this green transformation to happen so fast.
Well, I can say in Thailand, I just installed a solar system, and I did the calculations, and depending on how much sunshine, it'll be between 4 and 5 years to recoup the investment. But that's a pretty good rate of return. So even just in economic terms, this, I think, was definitely worth it, and I get an app so I can see how much solar power.
But they have a lot of sun, you know, for Polish people, you don't need to tell us. Thailand is number one,
Absolutely.
maybe, destination to go for holidays.
Well, but
what about normal life?
Also, solar farming is increasing, and I think they have a better regulatory system than Poland on this. Spatial planning limitations in Poland are among the worst in Europe. It's very difficult to locate wind turbines, so the average between 500 and 1,000 meters distance. In Europe, it's 2,000. In Poland, I don't see any reason for that. Why make it so difficult to put up turbines? And similarly, there are a lot of obstacles to solar farming in this country.
We don't have so much sun, you know.
No, but it is a good point. It's not a reliable, it's a variable energy source. So you don't want to put all of your emphasis on that. But why put obstacles in the way of implementing it? And that's what the Polish government does. You have a very cumbersome, clunky, outmoded regulatory system. Sorry if anyone is offended by that, but it's a fact. And now I mentioned 86% disagreement with the statement before. Poland does not need more regulations. This is a fantasy. What you need is to clear away the obstacles to people fixing this. Why is it difficult to engage in direct transmission? Why do you have state monopoly power companies? Other countries don't have that. Why do you have a state monopoly grid that is in collusion with those to keep out alternative energy? And the answer here, break up this power monopoly, allow private firms to generate either for direct transmission or on-site generation, which is currently very restricted in Poland. There is no ecological or economic justification for that, period. You should get rid of it. And you will go a long way, maybe not 100%, but a long way toward generating this economic growth offset for the capital costs that you're going to endure for the transformation. So I don't think you need more regulation. I think you need smarter, leaner, more conducive to rule of law. And also, there's an assumption that regulations have zero compliance costs. Anyone in business will tell you this is not true. So it's easy for a parliamentarian to say, well, we'll regulate you and assume it costs zero to comply. But compliance costs are quite high, especially in Poland, where you have one of the highest administrative cost burdens in the European Union. So every regulation should be measured against the cost and the benefit, and not only look to the potential benefit.
But that's what you are saying is interesting also for the whole, West, because that's what we are discussing, and Róża mentioned this as well, because European Union is seen as a regulator, as a regulation power. That's our actually soft power. That's what we associate with the EU, that we create in the EU some standards, some norms. But too much regulation can be bad as well. So how, Róża, would you see, where is really the balance? Where is the balance for people like you, European parliamentarians?
I don't know if there is a balance. Depends, because you also say that this energy grid shouldn't be regulated by the state, but etc. This is also a change in regulation. So, call it what you like, you regulate, and you also demand regulation so that it works better in Poland. But if we want to be energy safe, for example, on this continent, we need a European energy grid, and then we must agree on standards. And this is not additional regulation, but we need common standards. This is one, and this you can call whatever you like, it is regulation. Second thing is those huge emissions that we still produce on this continent. In order to change this, we must agree on certain standards. And in order to achieve those standards, you regulate. I'm sorry, but you give proposals, what to do with waste, what to do, how to transport energy, etc., how to produce also energy. And now for production of energy, I find it extremely exciting, really, and this financing of innovation, of education, of finding new ways. Of course, budget also is a regulation, how much we pay together to a common budget. Should we do it together or should we do it state by state, etc., etc. I believe very much in this togetherness. We have here on this continent a much better chance to be not only energy safe, but emit less and find better solutions if we do it together. But in order to achieve this, we also need common financing, because storage of energy is now the main challenge, and we may need a breakthrough, and it will be expensive. But I also believe when I see the progress, despite the fact that you don't see this, but I see a huge progress, like
Maciej, don't be so sad.
Hydrogen, etc. This, of course, cars were cars, but they are very much different today, and this needs also financing. And here also, this is also a challenge to be able to think in a little bit a broader perspective and have a higher European financing for innovation, and also to find a way for storage. And then you can also use sun energy in darkest parts of Europe, etc. This is a huge issue. But just one more sentence as far as those changes, if they are fast or not. I remember those discussions remember because my family was always very involved in those issues, so we sort of transmit them from grandfather, father, grandchildren. About during the Industrial Revolution, what really changes and how it changes the human being when the contact of the hand with the materia. I don't know if you were ever interested in Ruskin Morris. With hand and materia, how it changes the mentality of the human being. So this distance is growing. We are changing much faster than ever. And when you look at the generation that was born in the beginning of the 20th century, my mother is still alive, she's 97 years old, and she stays with me. And there was never such a fast change. Sorry, I witness it. And this is fascinating, and it's not a threat. We must use it as a challenge that brings to positive.
So we come back to this change, but before I get back to you, maybe there are some people who want to contribute to our discussion or maybe put some question that will be possible. Yes, please, there's a lady over there, and please introduce yourself also.
Yes, my name is Eva Rogalska. This doesn't say anything to you because I am nobody. When I used to be a student, I was really very good at energy and mass calculations, balances. And I must say that I am horrified. Here we are discussing something like, let's say, open heart surgery. None of us, none of you is an expert in energy, mass calculations, and so on. You are discussing at the level of, let's say, philosophical aspects. The age of Mrs. Thun, mother, and so on and so on and so on. Green transformation, just like that.
So
I would like to ask you, yes, this is my question. How do you see your role, a doctor in economics, humanists, in judging upon something that doesn't belong to your domains? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We are not hearing very well, but I repeat, the question is about the evidence, how much convinced we should be about this transformation without being really experts in the matter. That's what I get from your question, right? So maybe, Róża, before I get to you, maybe also to Maciej, because Maciej represents really, you are an economist, you can calculate, you are saying the transformation is not that big. So please convince us. What is the proof? Where is the evidence?
Excuse me. So, of course, there are so many misunderstandings here in the room. So, of course, first start me with agreeing with Tom that the regulation would be helpful to make the transformation faster, because the prices will then act faster and better with, let's say, reallocating the resources, because this is basically reallocation. So from less capital-intensive technologies to more capital-intensive technologies, from more resource-intensive technologies to less resource-intensive technologies, etc. And so there are different, let's say, layers of this transformation. I'm dealing with this for 15, 17 years already. So I am pretty convinced I understand it, also physics of it pretty well. And let me say it like that. The transformation is cheap. Yes, it costs about 2% of the global GDP per year, which is a lot if we count in billions, of course. But it's also 2%, only 2%. It is, let's say, like a 1 year GDP growth, yes, or something like that. Yes? So this is not much. Yes? So this is basically like abandoning.
But that is 2% where?
But let me speak, because if you interrupt it so too often that I am not.
2% where? In the EU countries?
No, globally, but in the EU, this is everywhere more or less the same. because the relation between capital and product is basically constant across countries. So therefore, it is basically the same. The same is about the energy density of capital, etc. So you have to. There must be some kind of incentive, market incentive or non-market incentive from regulation, in order to convince people to invest in different type of capital. Yes, and of course, in reality, you always have both. Yes, because there are always politicians and businessmen. Yes, and they are always in cooperation and also in conflict. So when Tom said that we are over-regulated, at least, for instance, in the power sector, also in other places in Poland, that's right. We are. Yes, because historically in Poland, but not only in Poland, in most of the OECD countries, with exception of the United States, the power sector was basically state-owned from the very beginning. That was the state activity, state electrified, state built power plants, built electricity grid, etc. European Union started to deregulate the market in the late 1990s, and then the process went on until very recently, when the war in Ukraine started, and the crisis situation, we don't know yet, yes, but maybe it can at least stop the process of deregulation, or maybe even put it backwards, yes, because this is at risk as well. In Poland, we are not very advanced with it. We are, at least on the political side, people are much, I would say, reluctant to accept that we should deregulate the power sector. And the state monopoly in the power generation is protected by political class, but many different ways of protection. Yeah? So you can really talk about longer, but they do protect. Let's say, for instance, the regulation, the landscape regulation that doesn't allow to build the windmill too close to in the vicinity of the houses is also a way to protect the state-owned enterprises. There is a regulation that stopped the institutional regulation that stopped the very rapid development of photovoltaics in Poland. That was driven basically by the prices. In the last few years, Poland was second market globally after China with respect to the dynamics investment in photovoltaics. Yeah? So we built very quickly almost 10 gigawatts of solar power, not yet 10. And why is it so? Because people are pragmatic, they react. But if they are not allowed, if state, for instance, if there is an issue of certification of offshore wind power generation, yes, and this is very regulated part, and everything what the Polish state does is to favor state-owned companies, not to introduce market competition. Yeah, so, and this is a problem. This is actually slowing down the change, and because the change can really be quite quick, because technologies are there. They are not abstract.
So I understand that there is this issue between, regulate, but you can regulate in different ways. You can have regulations which are favorable, and you can stop also certain process by regulating. But I want also Róża to answer to this question, because I think it was basically addressed also to you.
I would say, you have regulation, you have destruction, because of course those consumers and those people who live and use, there is industry on one side and the producers of energy and whatever, and you have those consumers and users, and they must be protected. So that's why you regulate prices, etc. This embargo on Russia now, for example, this is also a regulation. And now, prices don't regulate everything, I am sorry. We've been waiting for a long time on this roaming to come to the level 0. We can discuss very much about it, is it positive or not, but finally the results are very positive and the users have to be protected. We are criticized, I come back to the charger, common charger. We are criticized that it lasted too long. It's exactly because we didn't want to regulate, because we waited for the market, for the producers to agree, and they never did. So finally, we had to regulate it, etc. So this balance, I don't know where it is, but the same for energy. What we need is stop climate change and give security to the users, from my perspective, on the whole continent, that peace runs Law and Justice, the ruling party in Poland, a destructive policy. This is a completely different issue. We cannot give it as an example of regulation because it is destruction and not regulation, so let us be clear. Secondly, in every domain, wherever we regulate and make laws, of course there are millions of experts and the politicians are there, or the final decisions are there to take the sum of the knowledge and balance it so that it serves the citizens and serves the industry, which is extremely difficult. But if you speak, for example, now about energy, you have millions of specialists in various domains, because energy is not one specialist for the whole spectrum of energy, but there are many elements, and here you have people who try to gather them so that we are able to see the big picture. So I'm very happy that you are here, I must admit.
Okay, Tom, you wanted to add something, and then I will get back to you if there is any more comments or questions.
Two points that I think are worthwhile. The lady asked a very intelligent and clear question, I thought, and I'm going to disagree with the lady. There's an engineering problem and there's an economic problem. We have to be very careful not to confuse the two. Well, political we'll set aside for the moment. When I had solar power installed, it was an engineer and a group of electricians who did the work. I didn't hire economists to come install my solar power. But the engineer is a business person operating within a market where she has to price labor, the aluminum for the installation, the machinery, and everything else. The engineer can tell me what's the best conductor of electricity, but I didn't use gold wiring. It's copper, because there's more copper. That's the economic dimension, supply and demand. So we can't say, let's have engineers run everything. That was tried, actually, in the past and didn't turn out so well. We need prices and the economic input. But then there's a clear, it's dawned on me, a distinction of what we understand by regulation. And I think we might agree. You talked about regulations as, well, we need standards. We need to make them regular. That's what regulate does. You regulate by making something regular, like a regulator on an engine. But the example you gave was members of the European Parliament designing the compulsory mandatory jam jar. That's not regulation. That's a command. That's direction. I agree we need regulation. That's called the rule of law. What we don't need is members of Parliament telling us how big our jam jars have to be. Well, but this is what you gave as the example. When regulation came up, you said, we're going to tell you how big your jam jar has to be. I think we have too much of that, too much of these orders, commands, do this, do that. You get an electrical shock or a sugar cube if you do what we tell you to do. What we need is real regulation by rule of law, which is to say, equal for everyone, easy to understand, and here's what parliamentarians usually don't understand, with all respect, low compliance costs. If I tell you, here's the rule, but the compliance cost is greater than any conceivable benefit of following it, you won't do it. And you're going to go under the table, around, do the business in the back alley. Adding more directions actually means less real regulation. And this is where we should be looking. And these simple examples I gave. Why is it almost illegal in Poland to engage in direct transmission rather than having to go through the compulsory grid? Is there any reason for that? I can't think of a good one, except it protects the monopoly of the state power companies and their managers and families and friends. Well, the hell with them. Allow people to produce electricity for the market, without having to be blocked by these smothering commands.
Yes, excuse me. Of course, I always try to bring everything to the simplest example. I take the jar again. But regulation says we must produce less packaging, or we must recycle more. And regulation says you can recycle so and so much, or this material must be recycled, the other, etc. You must use so and so much energy, which stops you from producing constantly new glasses, but recycle them, etc. It doesn't go into the details, but still it is the regulation. Still the result is that you have the system of giving back bottles, segregating rubbish, etc., etc. So all these are results of a well-understood and well-designed regulation. If this regulation is well-designed, it comes exactly to what you say, that we produce less rubbish, less jars, we use less energy for producing them and for getting rid of them, etc., etc. So I think that here is the key to see how, and the last sentence, I also use, if there is no participation of the society in this production of energy and also using energy, if there is no participation of society, that means constant education. That's why the example of a generation before me, this will not function. I always believe that, you know, on one side you regulate, on the other side there must be, and here I also agree, an understanding and participation of those who either produce or consume it. Otherwise it will not
I don't
work.
know about you, but I can have my own summary to the discussion until now, that, you know, whatever we do, the free market will be definitely impacted by this revolution by regulations, because whatever you do, the regulations have to be there, smart, but still, without regulations, we will not do this transformation. So it's definitely having an impact on a concept of free market. Any other question from the audience, or maybe somebody? Yes, there is a lady.
Dzień dobry.
Oh, sorry.
To ja tutaj z tej strony jestem. Tutaj, halo? Tutaj jestem, dzień dobry.
Hello, there are 3 polls on the stage, so can I ask a question in Polish? We are talking about economics, transformation. So I will tell you about the Oder River situation and try to tell you how complex this process is. So different sectors generate electricity from coal, from gas, wind energy is also produced, or solar energy. There are also other types of energy, but we have the 4 pillars. So how the final price is derived? This price is the price of the most expensive producer. So if we are producing electricity from gas, the gas that is most expensive dictates the price. So all the stakeholders that produce green energy, wind energy, it's very cheap right now. Unfortunately, it doesn't change the market too much because you have to adapt to the highest price. Why is it happening? We all know very well that the market would only be supplied by wind energy, and there would be no entities producing energy from coal. And your question is? No, it's just my comment to your discussion. It's not a question. We are talking about economics and economy. There are producers who deliver electricity for cheap, others productions is expensive. We do not have too much green energy. Maybe in 50 years' time it will be predominant. I understand your commentary. Oh, thank you. That's all from me. And please pass the mic to this lady.
Prices really will be higher and higher. Let me come back to you, but first the question over there.
Thank you. Good morning. I would like to ask what...
Could you just introduce yourself? Sorry, I didn't.
My name is Marta Chocianowska. What do you think about putting extra taxes on meat production?
On meat, just to reduce the consumption of energy,
Yes.
right? I don't know who wants to take it.
Just maybe, I can address both questions very quickly. Yes, I didn't understand very well the second one, but the first one was a lot about the power market. Power market is a very complicated beast, as every market that probably exists right now, because we are living in a pretty advanced civilization. But what you have described, the marginal pricing, this is true only for the day-ahead market. So I am selling today the contract for the delivery for the power tomorrow, or for the certain hour. But at the same time, you have many different arrangements. That it can be, for instance, direct sale for a different date. That can be pre-arranged on the constant, on the long-term arrangement between me and you. Yes, so deliver the power for a year. So, and this is not priced like that. It can be directly agreed and not go through the stock exchange. Yes? So this is an extremely complicated market with very different arrangements. So you cannot equalize it to the one contract. Yes, I understand. But to say you can say that some players on the market in certain market conditions earn a lot of money. The others are earning much less. Yes, and it does happen. Yes, if you made the right bet, of course, you will be remunerated for it. If you made a wrong bet, you can lose a lot. And the problem of the transformation, not only so-called green transformation, but any in an advanced industrial economy or even in the pre-industrial economy, is that if you have certain social division of labor, social division of capital, certain division of power, and the technological change comes and destroys the status quo, then you have the certain group that disagrees and very, very, very loudly disagrees, because the change is always problematic. Yes, it can destroy the landscape. It can destroy your social position. It can destroy your wage. Yes, your employment conditions, etc. Or if it creates the chances for somebody else, you don't like it. Yeah, so it is not something that reassures you in your problems. Yeah, so you have to and this is problematic from the perspective of the green transformation, because you have to, at the same time, you have incumbents in the mining sector, in the power sector, in the politics, in science that are very good in construction, traditional combustion engine, whatever, engineers, yes, and then you have newcomers, and those newcomers are promising, of course, a lot. They are risking their money, they are risking their reputation, they are believing that they may be wrong, they may be right. And this is when you need so-called free market or liberal arrangements. You need space for people to experiment, to make mistakes, to fail. Yes, because this will bring the real change. And regulation, very often, can destroy it at the very beginning. Of course, we need some kind of regulation. Yes? So even informal regulation do exist between one and another. Yes? And so we are polite, yes, in a certain way, which is accepted in the era we are living in. And this is also kind of a social regulation.
So we understand that, I don't want to discuss about regulations only, because that's a very important thing, but it's not the only one. I understand your comments and as a worry about the scale of change and also financing all this transformation.
But financing is cheap, as I said. This is only 2% of GDP. It's not much.
That's the perspective of countries. It's microeconomics. But what about the simple person or company? We haven't discussed the business perspective. So maybe we have to go back to my initial question concerning also people. People who are not seeing this big picture, who are seeing it in the rhetoric of their own life and decisions concerning jobs, concerning, like in business, or to continue production, or to change, or to invest. So Tom, what would be your answer to the question on meat? Because that's also a very important change.
Yeah, and I think I hear other issues involved in the meat question. I also avoid cruelty to animals, so I don't eat meat and so on. But I think that the approach is just wrong. It's fundamentally wrong. If the concern is the externality in the form of greenhouse gases, and you want to address that through a tax policy, tax the externality, not what's produced. This is a fundamental mistake. In the US, they did this with sulfur emissions from power plants. Instead of saying you have to have below this level or be taxed, they mandated a very expensive device. The consequence was this was promoted by the brown coal industry because it made brown coal less expensive relative to hard coal. This is pure what we call rent-seeking or corruption, if you will, and this approach lends itself to that. If the concern is the externality, greenhouse gases or pollution, then address it there. I'll give you one example of how this could come around and bite you in the back. There's a big move now for lab-grown meat. I'm very excited about this because people could have a steak without a cow having to suffer. That will be much less carbon intensive, right? You don't have to deal with methane emissions and so on. But if you tax meat, and that's considered meat, now you're putting a burden on that. So go directly to the externality rather than to the product per se, so I think would be a better approach. I'm skeptical generally about these kind of taxes, but if that's the approach, tax the externality directly.
Thanks. An interesting comment. Any other comment from the audience, just to give a chance? Okay. And maybe, on this side, anyone? Because I'm not seeing very well. Oh, there is a gentleman. Okay, please, go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Palmer, yes, you interpreted my words as, favoring engineering sciences. No, this is not at all the case. We need three things: regulation, laws, markets, and so on and so on. This is true. Engineering, this is clear. But the most important thing is basic knowledge. Basic knowledge. Everything starts at the level of basic knowledge. None of you has any experience with basic knowledge needed in whatever you call it, green or pink or blue transformation, any kind of transformation concerning energy and things related to it. So for me, this is really kind of shocking, the easiness, the lightness with which you treat those subjects.
Okay, let us handle that. But before, let us have another question from this side.
Hello, my name is Sasha Volok. I'm a law professor from the United States. It seems to me when we ask the question, is the green transformation going to be very disruptive or very expensive, either from the perspective of economies as a whole, or businesses, or even individuals? I'm not sure that that question is well posed or well formulated, because you could imagine green transformations that are very expensive and others that are very inexpensive. So for example, if you had a green transformation that was based on having an environment that is conducive to innovation, to innovators entering markets, and where regulation is needed, if it's a general, neutral regulation like tradable emission permits or taxation, regulations that are consistent with liberal neutrality, then you can have a green transformation which costs very little, where you and I might barely notice that anything is going on and our living standards are not very much affected. On the other hand, you could imagine a very different green transformation that rejects the premise of markets, that wants to micromanage everything, and that's a kind of transformation which is going to be enormously disruptive, both, disruptive for countries as a whole, and for businesses, and for individuals, especially since there are some people who think green transformation doesn't really count unless we suffer, unless our ethics and our very lifestyle is radically transformed. So it seems there are many kinds of green transformations. The good kind is the one that is very inexpensive, that is consistent with liberal neutrality. So the question is, what kind of a green transformation should we want?
Thank you. Thank you for this clarification. I think it's a very important one. Of course, we are mostly dedicated, our attention is on Europe and on our situation. We have also a comment there. That will be maybe the last one, and then we'll get back to the panelists.
Thank you. My name's Christopher Gleadle from the Paddy Ashdown Forum. I'd like to actually bring a couple of these questions together and just make a point, and it's about technologies and integration of technologies, because as much as we hear the bigger picture being mentioned, all I'm hearing is silos, not the bigger picture, because we're not talking about technological integration. So there are ways, for example, of being able to provide solar power, being able to provide energy, and be able to tackle multiple issues across agriculture, wastewater, and various other multiple issues of biosphere service level reductions. So my real main question is, and like, for example, with a reflection back onto the solar panel on the roof, you knew what your financial return on investment was going to be. But do you know what your environmental return on investment was going to be? For example, if you're looking at large fields of solar panels, the engineers aren't going to sell you something else. They're only interested in selling you solar panels. But interestingly, in about 25 to 30 years' time, when you understand mass balances, you will know that the production of those panels is going to have dropped off, and then they're going to need replacing. But that's a lot of toxic cleanup to be done, and which is beyond the investment time horizon. So you've got to look at also decision sequencing as well as integration.
Chris, thank you very much. We have to stop there because we have really just 3 minutes left. So each panelist 1 minute. Róża?
Yeah, about the costs. We haven't spoken about inaction. The world is changing faster than 100 years ago. The world is changing.
Not faster. No. Completely not.
No, okay.
Completely not.
Okay, you will clarify you both
later on. The world is changing, that we agree.
Always.
The climate is changing. The costs of inaction, and that's what we constantly stress, will be much more expensive than the costs of action. Not discussing now the situation with the war in Ukraine, which we have, and which will cause that the next time, this winter, will be expensive and difficult. But we must act anyhow. And now the issue is how to do it in a most economic, human, effective way, so that the climate change is not as rapid as it is, or it stops in 2050, the emission neutrality, and an agreement on at least this continent, and from this continent rayon on the world, how to cooperate in order to achieve the goals and let the next generation survive.
So I understand the gentleman's point. It's really important to decide what kind of transformation we want to have, not to do it just because we want to do it, but to think about the effects in a very complex way. Maciej and then Tom.
Well, of course, I appreciate that we would like to live in some pivotal times. Maybe that will really be revolutionary, but I don't think we do. Yes, we'll, at least in this perspective. I think that we will struggle with achieving the, let's say, goals from Paris, and this fixed date, 2050, probably will not be met. But the progress will be tremendous. Yes, in the meantime. We will see a lot of photovoltaics. We will see the solutions to the problem of the industrial waste, because the market will price it. Yes, there will be market for it created. We will see probably electric cars in the future. Yes, but this will be not that radical as an introduction of car as such. Yes, and we will see much more energy efficient appliances in households. But first appliances were very radical and very transformative for the households, and more energy efficient appliances are not. They are simply more energy efficient. And therefore, please don't exaggerate. But this should be encouraging, what I say, because it means that it is easy, which is a lot about not that much. And it will happen.
We got your point. Thank you. Tom, last word goes to you.
Two things. One, we haven't mentioned nuclear, and I think we should be focused on private investment in nuclear, and the new mini reactors, I think, makes sense. I was anti-nuclear decades ago. It is so much safer now. It's safer than coal-powered in terms of the impact on human life. But if it's a big state enterprise, it's not going to work so well. Go towards private, decentralized investment. I think that's part of the mix. And then the last point, the law professor raised a very good point. If you are committed that green transformation must be painful and terrible, we must wear our hair shirts and be miserable, that's green transformation, then it will be like that. But instead, if you say, let's try to find a way to achieve the outcome at the least cost, you can have a green transformation that is not costly and will not impoverish the nation. You can continue to grow. And the last point, the investment that will be needed can be offset with an economic growth offset by opening up the economy more to produce value to pay for the investments.
Thank you so much. So a lot of positive energy and, positive message. I would just say at the end, I just wish to all of us that the word nuclear will be associated only with the green transformation, not with any other issue. Thank you very much. Róża, Thun, European Parliament, Maciej Bukowski, WiseEuropa, and Ton Palmer. Sorry, say again.
Atlas Network.
Atlas Network, I forgot. Małgorzata Bonikowska, the Center for International Relations. Thank you.
It's not always easy to recognize. It may look like this, or like this. It may be a burden, but it is a responsibility that we embrace nonetheless. But if it means this for one person and this for someone else, maybe it ultimately means being there for one another. It isn't handed to us, but we know where to find it and how it feels, how it tastes, and what it sounds like when we finally have it. It means different things to different people, but for many, it means everything. And if we all fight for it, it will eventually bring us together.
Ihre Ausreise
Network is, as the name suggests, a network, and it's global. We work all around the world. We're based in the US. We have about 159 partners in the United States right now, and the bulk of our partners are outside, nearly 500 in total.
Atlas Network, it connects people from all over the world, defending the idea of human dignity, defending human rights and personal liberties.
Atlas Network is focusing on, I think, the most important and moral cause in the entire world.
We partner with local innovators, local leaders who understand conditions on the ground in communities facing real challenges. We look at the people from the worldwide freedom movement that are passionate, are ready to make a difference, understand local conditions, and we invest in them.
At Atlas Network, we unleash individual ingenuity to enrich humanity.
The United States does not have a lock on the idea of freedom and liberty. Those ideas are beyond borders.
One of the main goals of Atlas Network is to eradicate poverty around the world, and we do that by investing millions of dollars in our partners' work every year.
Historically, wealthy nations around the world have tried to help low-income countries develop. The way we've been doing it traditionally has not really been working. So there's a movement to do development differently, and that means we need to step back as outsiders and rethink the role that we're playing in helping people in low-income countries achieve their dreams.
We want to make the world a better place. We want to make the world a freer world.
All of us want to leave a legacy and be part of something big to make a better world. This is exactly the work of Atlas Network.
With our growing number of hundreds of successful partners, we're stronger than ever.
Changing the world.
Changing the world.
Changing the world
starts together with us.